I'm Don Bodan. Today's Composer Tools is going to be pretty fun. It's summertime, so anybody who's composing knows what that means. It means you're getting calls for bidding on doing those Halloween movies. So today I'm going to share my thoughts on the different concepts and tropes that have been used over the years for scoring for suspense. We'll talk a little bit about the things that we're all biologically programmed to trigger uncomfortable feelings just from sound, and how we can kind of think of those and incorporate those in scores. And then last, I'm going to do some speed writing, trying to create a suspense score using just the techniques and tropes we talked about today. Before we dive in, I want to say a big thank you to Soniccouture for sponsoring today's video. Soniccouture has released Threnody Strings 60-piece orchestra, 26 articulations, Kontakt Player instrument. The library is designed as a contextual playground with conlingo clatters, clusters, clouds, arcs, and glissandi. Library normally sells for $2.99, but Soniccouture was kind enough to send over a special promo code that brings the library down to $239. Promo code's good till July 2nd, 2021. I'll include it with the link over to Soniccouture first thing below. Now, I've done a few scores for suspense films and TV cues, and one of my favorite scores I've ever did was using a Bernard Herrmann style score for a commercial. With every score I do, I like to make it unique. I like to have it create its own world. However, that doesn't mean I ignore what's happened in the past from the great masters of the macabre who've scored all of these wonderful horror movies over the years. What makes a score scary? Well, scores are always evolving. Fashion and trends in scoring are always changing. What might have been very frightening in the early days of film scoring may still work, but maybe doesn't have a modern, fashionable edge to it. But the science behind creating sounds and scores that will make us feel uncomfortable is pretty simple, because we're biologically programmed to have certain instincts kick in when we hear certain things. Since the sound of a child crying will always make you take note and listen, and biologically it's telling you something is wrong. And then there's also the sound of predator animals. For hundreds of thousands of years, we've been programmed to be fearful and anxious when we hear a large predator animal. For many people like myself, harsh and unpredictable sounds can really throw us off. That's why things like the jump cut work so well. With just a simple, we can make something seem extremely frightening just with sound design or score. Some sound design and score used for films like The Shining and Exorcist, they actually did use babies crying or animals screaming as textures in the background. But a suspense score doesn't have to be that complicated. Think about it on one of the most famous suspense thriller scores, the Jaws soundtrack. It's just 2 notes, but what happens with it is the tempo increases and the instrumentation increases. And as John Williams adds to the level of intensity in the score, just going back and forth between 2 notes, it's causing anxiety. A classic score, The Omen, done by Jerry Goldsmith, kind of a chanting style to it, which is very reflective of Carl Orff's Carmina Burana, which has inspired a whole slew of horror and suspense scores. And using the human voice in even more creative ways has been used. You can use it as an ethereal voice or a devilish voice with all kinds of manipulation. There's also the Friday the 13th, just by simply adding some delay to a ooh, 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 and ah, ah, ah. Henry Manfredi puts us on edge in Friday the 13th. There was a shift in what people called the reality horror suspense films, like the movie Halloween. There's something about the pulse and the repetition that put us kind of on edge. Using strings for inducing anxiety has been a tradition for years, from the stabs used from Psycho to more clustered and avant-garde effects, which were all inspired by Pendrecki's Threnody for the victims of Hiroshima. If you haven't studied that score, then you need to dive in and listen to that. I'll include a link to that one below too. There were also a slew of 80s synth scores for horror movies, and they use some very simple tropes with repetition, with warbling, chaotic sounds, and those have made a big resurgence in today's scores as well. Something like using an alarm clock sound in your score could add a lot of anticipation or anxiety. I know that when my alarm clock goes off, the first thing I feel usually is anxious. The last 10, 15 years, we've seen a lot of push in the horror suspense genre to using more sound design, blurring the line between score and sound design, utilizing wavetable synthesis or granular synthesis. But one trope that I really love is the concept of using things that seem a little childish. Playing a very simple line with a toy piano or a music box, that can feel real weird. I don't know if that brings us back to a time when we actually were afraid that there were monsters under the bed. So those are the tropes and the thoughts I've had as I've built my little collection, my toolbox of things to use when I approach creating a world, a sonic world for a suspense score. So now, let's dive in and take some of those and see what we can create. So maybe something with a little music box. There's Soniccouture's music box. So I'm going to give us a little bit of a creepy sound. Something that's simple, and if you noticed what I'm doing there, we're doing that half step. And one thing I also noticed about this music box is I'm going to be able to use some of the effects that they've built in and give it an even creepier sound. So just with this little bit of chorusy mod wheel effect here with these frequencies, we're able to get something that's really whacking out these music boxes. So not only does it sound childish and creepy, like the monster is under the bed, now it's got a bit of hauntingness to it as well. And I don't want to get too picky with it just to mock this up. And then this way we have a little grace note on the first and third time we do that. So I think what might sound kind of fun is to add a little bit of some children's choir. I got some ums right now. This is the Big Bang Orchestra's Eimer children's choir. Really beautiful sound to this one. And so for this part, it might be nice to just have some of these children just kind of singing these little hums, humming along with some chords over the top of this piece. And by doing that with the choir, it gives it just a little bit more dimension, adds to the piece here. But I think I want something that's going to go ahead and open us in, that'll give us a little bit of an intro. So maybe we jump up to just some of the Eimer children's choir's sustains, some longs here, the ahs, and do something a little cascading for an intro. And I'm going to go ahead and use that music box here, the one that's got the whacked out rate. And it's really that half step that gives it that dissonance there. Now's a great time to go ahead and pull up Threnody and use a little bit of the molto sol ponticello. And we'll just do that down an octave, like. For that intro, just to give it a little texture. And that just kind of gives it a little bit of a lead-in. So now we've got some molto sol ponticello strings here. Just kind of figuring in our texture. It really starts to lead us into something to give us our main theme. And for the main theme, you could probably just play this part right by itself for the first time we listen to this. But a more exciting idea might be to let the children's choir sing our melody for the first time through, instead of having the music box pound out the dun 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 dun. So we could do that with the legato version of the Eimer. And that makes for a nice melodic haunt. I think if you hear the intro part, the children's choir is there in texture, but it really kind of leaps out here. So it might be kind of cool for the rhythm section as a music box is to kind of do it in half time right up here. and then we're set up for the music box to kind of take over there. And I wasn't originally going to quantize this very hard, but I feel like I need to get it a little bit tighter. And then also by adding a little bit of lower children's voices. And that gives me an opportunity to use one of my favorite articulations in Threnody, which is this glissando down. And it's right now. It's just going down. That's so freaky. So we go from here. Truly descending into some hellscape here. Now, one thing I don't do a lot is sing in sample library review videos. But in order to really get something, I think maybe we need to add a little bit of those textures or a rhythm. Like Friday the 13th has this little ow, 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 ow. And so that might be a fun thing to do. Now we got the little ha-has and ho-hos here. I'm just going to pull up one of my very favorite plugins, Soundtoys Effects Rack. And I'm just going to manipulate a little bit here. I'm just going to listen to my ho-hos and my ha-has. And then to give it a little more texture, I went ahead and added Echo Boy Jr., giving it some more 8th note delays, so it now blends like this. So we've well established the key, our theme. We've done a little bit with half steps, and we've got a spooky voice going on. We got some childlike sounds with the choir and the music box. The strings are adding some odd textures and dissonance, falling. And now I'm going to pull up a Threnody string instrument that just has an unstable pitch. And the reason I love this one is because it doesn't matter how long it holds for. You don't know what's going on with it, if it's going to continue, if it's going to stop. So I'll take it from like the second half of this part. And that gives us a little bit of a crescendo with just using the mod wheel. I'm going to clean it up a little bit here. Give it a little more towards the end. And then I'm also going to go ahead and use expression. So by drawing in an expression and my mod wheel controls, I've got a now crescendoing unstable pitch across 2 octaves. And then we couldn't really get away with a horror score without something like little psycho stab callback, used quite often. And for that one, I'm using the micro polyphony fast. Only all I'm doing is playing a couple notes together. And I'm going to program that in as well. So now we've got something that's starting to get a little chaotic. And I think we need to add a little boom or two in here to really... So I want to add a little boom here, and I'm going to use the dark dimensions, audio imperias. That's a very trailery boom, but I think it'll work for what I'm asking for. And now you probably hear that this boom is out of tune with what I'm actually playing. So now if I was scoring this to picture, I'd be locking it in. I'd probably be changing my tempo a little bit because I'd want to add a little increase in feel here. So something as simple as that can add a lot. Now, one of the synths I use a lot is this UVI. And what I like about this is I think it can add a lot of intensity just as a pulse, which is something that we talked about in a lot of the tropes. And then to tie this whole thing together, maybe we just repeat the beginning of this music box theme here for the first 4, because that's going to tie us all back in with something we've heard before. Now, normally when I do these videos, I always say that you should write out your music in a piano line first, and then orchestrate from there. So I want to make a very important point here. Traditionally, if I write a piano part and orchestrate it out to the instruments, it's a way of doing arranging. But by doing it this way, with speed scoring, I'm only pulling up instruments as I think of them to see how they might mix together. Whereas writing out a piano part with the entire piece, I know where it's going to start, I know where the middle is, I know where the end is, but I'm limited to my imagination. Doing it this way, it's going to open up where the possibilities are, and I'm no longer limited to my imagination. I'm now in brand new territory, which is what a lot of speed scoring is for me. I think we're ready for that unanticipated rhythms. So things that are unexpected. And I think we can do that with some hits. I'm going to pull up one of my go-tos for quick orchestration, Project Sam's Symphobia 2. And I've got it set here so I could just bang out some notes. I'll play something that just comes to me, kind of trying to surprise myself. Yeah, that feels pretty good. Just open it up. It's okay if it's not quantized completely because I played it pretty well. And now I think one thing that I'd like to do is add a little whoosh with a smash hit. And that is going to be utilizing Steampunk's hit here. And that's pretty interesting because it gives a whole new dimension. It kind of sounds like chains or something. So I'm going to go ahead and play that one here. You can hear it's off because it's got a little whoosh on the intro and there's no way to quickly adjust that. So I go ahead and what I do a lot of times is just bounce my MIDI in place, and then that way I could just take my hit here and line it right up. So that's kind of cool. It's starting to sound neat. And then because I've got this smash hit, I think we could also utilize that. And I know that in Steampunk is on C3 here. So I'm just going to copy my orchestral hits performance, put it down here, and move it up to my C3. So now we got a little more dimension, a little bit of ring to that metal slam. And I don't really like it now that I'm hearing it mixed with that. I want something with a little more brash sound to it. Let's see what this one is. There we go. That's got a little bit of a little distortion to it. And then also using that Fallout music group, Steampunk, I'm just going to go into the sample set here. And I think there's some switch sounds that I like. that I've used in the past. Yeah, I like that. It's nice and high. And what I'm thinking about is that this would be a nice way to add a little bit of subdivision, which will add something to our thing. So rather than just one click, I'm going to go ahead and load up these two different instruments, going into my map editor. And putting them side by side. So I'm able to trigger them now with C3 and C4, or C4 and D4, I should say. So now I can do something like this. Yeah, I'm really liking that. That's a lot of fun. So something else I might want to do is look around, see if I could find some kind of polysynth with a lot of attack to it. That doesn't sound too 80s. Let's see what that sounds like. I'm literally just copying my orchestra hit and playing this new preset with it from the UVS 3200. Yeah, now it's starting to come together. We went somewhere unexpected. We've got this chaotic jerkiness to it for these rhythms. But now, what would really make it shine is to go back to Threnody and pull up and really utilize the instrument. For this part, I've programmed Threnody with 4 different articulations. So here's something that's a little normal, but still a little odd. And the only one I'm not loving is this. I want a little more, maybe a little spider conglingo. There we go. So by performing this and programming it at the same time here, I could get something underneath our odd rhythm that I think is really going to add a lot to it. So now we've got that performance, and I can just hit play. So when it plays back, it's automatically tracking my XY movement that I did very quickly with the record button on, which is really cool. That's one of the things I'm digging about this. However, I didn't have any mod wheel or expression programmed in because my hands were busy, so I'm going to go ahead and program. And just to be safe, I could program in my expression. So what would make this even more intense is to actually stack and start to do this up here, adding those half notes. And now I'm going to pull that vocal again just to see what happens at the end here. And I'm going to cut it. And then we'll just take that second 4 from the intro, copy it to the end, and take a listen to see what we got out of today's speed writing. Oh, that was fun. I think there's some good ideas in there. And if you've missed any of my other videos where I do any kind of speed writing, as I kind of call it, they're not all going to be winners. Everything in here isn't ready to publish. I've thrown this together in an hour. But I think by doing more and more of that kind of work, that's what has helped me to produce a huge catalog over the years. It's also given me lots of backup ideas. I always have something to grab onto in case I'm ever stuck. Or if I get hired for that horror score, I can always say, I had written something last year as I was doing some speed writing. Maybe there's a couple motifs there that I could borrow from, or that might be a good launching point for a particular project. I hope you've gotten something exciting, something new out of this video. Thanks for spending some time with me here today. Please comment below and tell me what your favorite horror score is, and give the video a like, thumbs up, share it with your friends. We'll see you sometime soon for another episode of Composer Tools.